invasion of Russia into Ukraine, and the latest, we'll be speaking with the Director, Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies, Anthony Killer, who is joining me to have more insight into this. Thank you so much for joining us on World Now. The US and the UK will no longer accept oil from Russia as part of the barrage of sanctions on the country for invading Russia. Before now, the price of oil was selling above $100. What effect do you think this would have on global crude oil prices?
Well, good to be here. It's going to have a negative effect. There's no doubt. When we talk about oil and gas, we have to put it into context of energy. Generally speaking, Russia produces about 40% of the world's gas. So that would take a lot of pressure on energy generally, and petrol, oil and gas in particular, to this extent, because if the main suppliers are not supplying for any reason in the world, whether it's sanction or disaster, and those demanding still need the same amount of energy, and you have 40% of it less, it is easy to predict trouble. It is high now, and if we go on this way, it's going to be higher. Unfortunately, this is going to be bad for everybody, because whilst a country like Nigeria that produces crude oil will benefit from high cost of petrol per barrel, if you do not refine it, you're going to spend all your gain in buying it at a high price.
Recall that Russian President Putin warned in a video broadcast that oil prices may hit $300 if the West imposes sanctions on the Russian energy sector. But I'm more concerned about the effectiveness of these sanctions by the international communities. Are they enough to hurt Russian economy and ultimately pressure Russia into withdrawing its troops from Ukraine?
Well, it's not guaranteed, because you see, the effect of these things, in the short run, immediately, it's going to hurt Russia. But in the mid to long term, it's going to hurt everybody. Because again, we've looked at energy. Agriculture is another part where Russia plays a huge role. They provide up to 25% of wheat for the Western world. Financially, there's a lot of transactions. Russian investors and businesses are disinvesting and disengaging. Even the payment system is a problem, because if you take Russia off it, there's a lot of things connected around the Russian trade that will affect everybody adversely. So it's not, it's not a good situation for anybody at all. Russia at the receiving end right away, but in the mid-term to long term, everybody will start feeling that pain.
Well, let's look at the latest, the latest from the bellicose countries involving the combatant countries shows that there had been no progress to achieving a ceasefire in talks in Turkey at the first high-level meeting between the two countries. So the Kremlin has said it would stop the war if Ukraine ceased military action, enshrined in its constitution that it had no plans to join NATO, gave up annexed Crimea, and recognized the separatist regions of Donetsk and Luhansk as independent states. So do you ever see any compromise between these two bellicose countries happening anytime soon?
Well, I think one thing that needs to be said immediately, about international transactions, especially when they're desperate and high-profile ones like this one,
right, is
that one should not expect results immediately. I mean, students of history, of international history, will remember that during the Vietnamese talks, it took hours and days to decide the seating arrangement in the room. It's not something that's going to happen just within hours, even I dare say days. It normally takes a lot of time. But that does not mean that it will not happen. I'm quite optimistic that it will happen, because normally the way international talk happens is that people start by outlining how evil the other side is, and and how holy they are, and then at some point they find a compromise. My concern, though, is that the peace talk, the conversation, is being allowed to be managed mainly by the two parties involved, i.e. Ukraine and Russia. If you want to accelerate success in a peace talk,
Yeah.
you have to open it up to have more people involved, more countries and more organizations, because sometimes in international relations, compromise comes not from what the two people are talking about. Sometimes it comes from what NATO might be able to do, or what the EU might be able to do, or what America might be able to offer or take away from the table. So to that extent, I think we should just be patient and hopeful.
Yeah.
But if I had a way to advise anybody, my advice would be to open it up to more people, not just the two party in question.
Well, Professor Kila, Russia attacked a children's hospital in the besieged city of Mariupol. The bombing of 600-bed children's and maternity hospital that injured pregnant women was evidence of genocide, according to the Ukraine's President Zelensky. Is there any way justification for killing innocent Ukrainians, even though Mr. Putin claims he's fighting to protect them?
Well, there is no justification for anybody that kills or maims. There's no justification for loss of life. There's no justification for destruction of property. There's no justification for destruction of monuments or destructions of people's lives. Once you invade a country, you're wrong. There's no reason to invade anybody, let alone going ahead to bomb civilians, then up to the point of hospital.
Yeah.
That is a bad thing. There's no doubt about it. Where we are, you see, when war happens, it is the lowest, the most vulgar side of humanity and transaction.
Yeah.
But when we are where we are at the place of invasion, attack, and bombing, the best we can do is to limit the damage, to find a way to limit further destruction, to understand that everyone's life lost during the war is too many lives. So we just need to find a way to roll back. What is bad, but unfortunately, international politics does not work on conscience and what is noble. It's match politics, as I say. Unfortunately, it's about power. The reason why we're still having all this talk with Russia is because Russia has nuclear power. Because it cannot be treated like a Mediterranean country. It's not Afghanistan, it's not Libya. Because they have the power to fight back. And the people who want peace need to be pragmatic in international politics.
Well, we'll continue to monitor how events unfold in Ukraine and Russia and see how all of this will pan out at the end of the day. The Director of Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies, Professor Anthony Kila, thank you so much for your keenness of insight.
Good to be there.